Imagine two little siblings, just 10 and 7 years old, wandering alone in the freezing night. Everyone in town whispered the same cruel thing. Those kids bring bad luck. Families who tried to adopt them later faced accidents they could never explain. Doors slowly closed on them, one by one, until even the orphanage, the only place they thought was safe, pushed them out into the snow, as if they were cursed. But what if the world was wrong? What if these children weren't carrying bad luck, but carrying a story waiting for a miracle? If you believe every child deserves a second chance, please consider subscribing to join this growing circle of kindness. The northern American town of Fairbridge sat quietly at the edge of a vast pine forest, its streets buried under layers of fresh snow. Winter in this region was not simply a season, it was a test of endurance. Wind roared through the neighborhoods like an unseen beast, rattling window frames, shaking loose shutters, and scraping ice across rooftops. The street lamps flickered from the weight of snow clinging to them, casting dim halos of orange-white light over the frozen sidewalks. It was the kind of cold that seeped through walls and into bones. Fairbridge Children's Home stood on a small hill overlooking the town. The building was old, constructed of weathered red bricks now dulled by frost. Paint peeled from its shutters, and cracks spread across the stone steps leading to the front door. Even inside, the air always felt cold, as if warmth never quite reached every corner of the building. The hallways smelled faintly of old paper, dusty blankets, and the faint metallic scent of the radiators that wheezed weakly through the night. On a worn wooden bench near the dim hallway, two children sat close together. Ethan, 10 years old, leaned slightly forward with his arms wrapped around his younger sister. He wore a faded yellow shirt beneath a thin jacket missing 2 buttons. His dark brown hair was overgrown and uneven, and his hazel eyes held a mixture of exhaustion and alertness. Years of loss had carved seriousness into his young face. He had been forced to grow up early, and there was something guarded in the way he watched adults move around him, as if always preparing for something to go wrong. Lily, 7 years old, sat with her tiny hands gripping Ethan's sleeve. Her torn green shirt peeked out from under a knitted sweater many sizes too big for her. She had soft blonde hair tangled from sleep and blue eyes that used to sparkle with innocence but had dulled after years of fear and uncertainty. Her petite frame and timid posture made her appear even younger than she was. She relied on Ethan completely, and he never failed her. Not once. The two siblings had lived in the orphanage since Lily was only a year old. Their parents had died in a tragic car accident on an icy road, a memory Ethan barely remembered, except for the sound of adults whispering and the smell of hospital disinfectant. Fairbridge became their home, though home was a generous word for a place that felt more like a cold waiting room where no one stayed by choice. For a while, hope had flickered for them. Several families had tried to adopt the siblings over the years, but shortly after each adoption, misfortunes struck those families. One suffered a car crash. Another had a kitchen fire caused by faulty wiring. A third family experienced a sudden medical emergency completely unrelated to the children. None of these incidents had any connection to Ethan or Lily, but rumors in a small town grow quickly. Before long, whispers spread among the other children, then among the staff. And finally, to the one person who should have been the most rational of all. Margaret Calloway, the orphanage manager, was a woman shaped by decades of stress. In her late 50s, she stood tall but thin, her shoulders always slightly hunched from years spent carrying responsibility she felt no one else cared about. Her gray-streaked black hair was pulled tightly into a bun, and deep lines framed her mouth. Her narrow brown eyes darted constantly, always searching for something to worry about. She had once been warm-hearted, but over the years, loneliness and endless pressure had turned her wary and superstitious. Margaret believed deeply in signs, omens, warnings, unexplained patterns. So when whispers about Ethan and Lily carrying misfortune reached her, she did not dismiss them. At first, she tried to ignore the feeling creeping into her chest, but each new story, each repeated rumor, carved fear deeper into her. She began avoiding the children. Her footsteps in the hallway quickened when she saw them. She muttered under her breath when they passed her door. She prayed quietly at her desk, fingers trembling. Her fear grew irrational, twisting her perception until the siblings became a threat only she believed existed. That night, as the storm howled outside, Margaret stood in her small office surrounded by dusty file boxes. The single desk lamp cast long shadows across her worried face. She paced back and forth, boots tapping nervously on the wooden floor. Every so often, she glanced at the frosted window, as if expecting the night itself to deliver some kind of omen. The wind screamed against the glass, and that was when she made a decision she believed would protect her, the orphanage, and everyone inside. She would get rid of the children. Close to midnight, Ethan sensed something wrong. He tightened his arms around Lily as footsteps echoed through the hallway. Margaret emerged from the darkness, wrapped in a heavy brown coat. Her expression was rigid, her lips pressed into a thin line. She didn't look at the children with pity or humanity, only fear. "Get up," she said stiffly. Ethan instinctively moved in front of Lily. "Why?" he asked, his voice trembling. "There's no place for you here anymore," Margaret whispered sharply. "You bring things, bad things. I won't let it continue." Ethan stared at her, stunned. Lily began to cry softly, burying her face against his arm. Margaret grabbed the front door, yanked it open, and a wave of icy wind surged into the hallway. Snowflakes scattered across the floorboards. The cold bit at their skin instantly. "Out," she said. Ethan clutched Lily's hand and stepped backward through the doorway. The heavy door slammed shut behind them, leaving only the relentless wind, the swirling snow, and the dark night. There, under the dim glow of the orphanage's porch light, Ethan pulled Lily close. Her small body trembled, and he wrapped his arms around her protectively. The world around them was freezing, unforgiving, and silent, except for the roar of the storm. Step by step, the two siblings walked away from the only home they had ever known, disappearing into the snowy darkness. And for the first time in their lives, they were truly alone. The storm had passed, but the cold only sharpened in its wake. Ethan and Lily had been wandering for days, moving from alley to alley, eating whatever scraps they could find near the back doors of small diners and grocery stores. Their cheeks were raw from the wind, their fingers stiff from the cold, and their steps grew weaker with each passing hour. The town of Fairbridge felt endless when you had no destination, and eventually their exhausted bodies led them toward the tree line on the outskirts of the town, where the woods offered a strange mix of fear and shelter. The forest was silent except for the crunch of snow beneath their shoes. Ethan tried to lead confidently, but his small frame trembled with fatigue. Lily clung to the sleeve of his jacket, her steps stumbling. The farther they went, the thicker the snow became, piling on branches, covering pathways, and swallowing any sign of the town behind them. The cold stung their skin like tiny needles, and Lily's breath came in soft, shaky puffs. Ethan finally slowed, realizing Lily could barely stand. Before he could decide what to do next, a faint rustle echoed from behind a cluster of pines. Ethan instinctively pulled Lily behind him, his heart pounding. The sound grew closer, steady, rhythmic, someone walking through the snow with purpose. A tall man emerged from between the trees. He moved cautiously but confidently, his posture straight despite the winter wind. He looked to be around 45, with a strong, broad-shouldered build formed from years of physical training. His clothing was practical for the cold: an olive-green military field jacket, heavy boots, and dark denim jeans dusted with snow. His skin was light tan with natural texture, weathered from time spent outdoors and in harsh conditions. His short, dark brown hair carried streaks of gray near the temples, and his beard was neatly trimmed, framing a jawline marked with tired strength. A small scar ran through his right eyebrow, giving his deep-set blue eyes a slightly sharper, rugged look. This was Jack Carter. There was something steady and calm about Jack, a kind of quiet resilience that came from surviving things most people never talked about. Years in the Marine Corps had shaped him into a man who understood danger but also compassion. After leaving the service, he had moved to a small cabin at the forest's edge, hoping for peace and recovery, carrying invisible memories he still wrestled with. Beside him walked a German shepherd, large, muscular, and alert. The dog's fur was a mix of sable brown and deep black, with bright, intelligent eyes scanning the area. His ears stood sharply, and his steps were light despite his size. He was Ranger, a 5-year-old military working dog recently retired alongside Jack. Ranger had been trained for search and rescue, loyal and highly perceptive, with a calm but protective nature. Jack stopped when he recognized the shapes of 2 small children. His brows drew together in concern. The children looked fragile, their clothes torn, their faces streaked with dirt and cold. He raised his hands slightly, palms open, to show he meant no harm. "Hey there," Jack said gently, his voice deep but warm. "You two okay?" Ethan didn't answer. He stepped in front of Lily, trying to shield her despite his trembling legs. Jack noticed the protective gesture, and something softened in his expression. He slowly lowered himself onto one knee, bringing his face to their level. The movement was deliberate, slow, meant to ease their fear. Ranger approached on Jack's left side, sitting down obediently. The dog gently leaned his head against Lily's leg, as if sensing her distress. Lily's eyes widened in surprise, but she didn't pull away. "My name's Jack," he said softly, "and this is Ranger. We're not here to hurt you." Lily whispered, "Ethan, I'm cold." Jack's heart tightened. He could see the exhaustion in the boy's eyes, the way Ethan's hands shook from both fear and hunger. "Let me take you somewhere warm," Jack offered. "My cabin is just a little walk from here. I can make you something hot to eat. You both look like you haven't had a real meal in days." Ethan's voice cracked as he answered, "We can't. We bring bad luck." Jack blinked, taken aback. "Bad luck? That's what everyone says." Ethan's words were barely audible. "They say we cause accidents. If we go with you, something bad will happen." Jack studied the boy carefully. He saw the fear, the hopelessness buried under the brave front. He had seen that same expression in soldiers who carried burdens too heavy for their age. "Listen," Jack said after a moment. "No one brings bad luck. People just get scared of things they don't understand." His voice was firm, not dismissive, but reassuring, like someone who had battled his own superstitions and shadows. Ranger nudged Lily again, gently, and she touched the top of his head with trembling fingers. The small gesture felt like a crack of light in a long, dark tunnel. Jack rose to his feet and extended his hand toward Ethan. "Come on, at least get warm. You don't have to stay if you don't want to." Ethan hesitated. He looked at Lily's pale face, her lips trembling from the cold. He looked at Jack, who stood steady and patient, not pushing, not forcing, just offering. Finally, Ethan nodded. Jack smiled softly. "Good. Follow me." With Ranger leading the way, the man guided the siblings through the snowy forest toward the distant glow of a small, warm cabin, toward the first safe place they had known in years. Winter still lingered around the cabin, but its bite softened a little more each day. The thick snow on the pine branches began to loosen, sliding off in gentle thumps. Sunlight pierced through the clouds more often now, warming the frost-covered earth just enough to give everything a faint shimmer. Inside Jack Carter's wooden cabin, the warmth of the fireplace and the smell of simmering soup created a world completely different from the harsh cold beyond the windows. For Ethan and Lily, this new world felt unreal, as though they had stepped into someone else's life, someone safe. Jack moved around the kitchen with the natural rhythm of someone used to taking care of himself. His strong hands, rough from years of service and outdoor work, handled chores with surprising gentleness. His calm voice filled the house as he explained things, whether he was showing Ethan how to sound out a difficult word or reminding Lily to stir the pot slowly so it didn't spill. Though he rarely spoke of his past, small hints of it lived in the way he moved. Steady, controlled, always aware of his surroundings. The faint crease between his brows suggested burdens carried silently, but being around the children softened his expression more each day. Ranger, ever faithful, wandered between the siblings like an invisible guardian. The 5-year-old German Shepherd had shifted effortlessly into his new role. When Ethan practiced reading by the fireplace, Ranger lay beside him, occasionally placing a paw on Ethan's knee as if encouraging him. When Lily ventured to the porch to watch icicles drip from the roof, Ranger stayed so close that his warm fur brushed her leg. He was alert but gentle, his bright eyes scanning the surroundings with instinctive protectiveness. Jack had set up 2 small beds in the spare room, simple wooden frames with quilts he'd found in storage. To the children, they were the softest, warmest beds they'd ever slept in. Lily no longer woke at night screaming from nightmares. Instead, she slept curled up like a small cat, breathing softly while Ranger lay at the foot of her bed. Ethan slept deeper too, the tension slowly fading from his shoulders. Every morning, Jack cooked eggs or oatmeal, insisting they eat until full. Ethan, who had never known the sensation of a full stomach, experienced it with marvel each day. Lily, shy at first, began smiling at breakfast when Jack joked about Ranger stealing bacon. The house was filled with sounds that had never existed in their lives before. Soft laughter, clattering dishes, the low crackle of the fireplace. As the days passed, Ethan noticed something important. Nothing bad happened. No strange accidents, no sudden illnesses, no unusual events. The cabin stayed warm. Ranger stayed healthy. Jack cooked, taught, repaired, and smiled. Lily played, read, and slept peacefully. The world did not fall apart because they were in it. That realization settled slowly into Ethan's heart, loosening the grip of the fear he had carried for years. Still, Jack sensed the weight that lingered in the boy's gaze. One afternoon, while Lily colored quietly at the table and Ranger slept nearby, Jack took a seat beside Ethan with a stack of old adoption files he had quietly collected from town officials. His broad shoulders cast a protective shadow as he placed the papers down gently. "I've been looking into what happened with those families who tried to take you and your sister," Jack said calmly. Ethan stiffened, bracing for bad news. Jack shook his head. "Nothing that happened was your fault. Not even close." He opened the first file. The car accident? Caused by black ice, dozens of cars skidded that same night. The kitchen fire? Electrical wires that hadn't been updated in 20 years? The illness? A genetic heart condition the man had since birth. Each explanation was grounded in reality, logical and unrelated to the children. Ethan stared at the documents, his hands trembling slightly. But the adults, they said. Jack's deep-set blue eyes locked on his. "People get scared. When bad things happen, they look for someone to blame. Sometimes the easiest target is someone small and innocent." Ethan swallowed hard. For years he had believed he was the cause of everything. Hearing Jack say otherwise felt like stepping into the sunlight after living underground. Later that evening, Lily perched on the windowsill, watching the snow melt into drops that glimmered in the sunset. "It's pretty," she whispered. "It means spring is coming," Jack said, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. The truth was settling in for both children. The so-called curse had never existed. The only real danger had been the fear others carried, and the belief that fear had forced onto two innocent lives. With the coming of spring, the ice around their hearts began to melt as well. Spring crept into the forest slowly, like a shy visitor unsure whether it was truly welcome. The last patches of snow melted into thin streams that trickled between roots and stones. Buds appeared on branches that had been bare for months, and the air carried a gentle warmth that softened the sharpness of winter. Jack Carter's cabin, once surrounded by a sea of white, now stood amid fresh colors, soft greens, pale yellows, and hints of blooming wildflowers pushing through the thawed earth. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere had changed too. Where once there had been silence, laughter now filled the rooms. Ethan and Lily had transformed in just a few weeks. Ethan, who used to carry tension in his shoulders and fear in his gaze, now walked with steadier steps. His face had gained color, and his hazel eyes looked brighter every time he completed a page of his reading lessons. Lily, once timid and afraid of sudden noises, now hummed softly as she swept the floor or placed Ranger's water bowl in its proper corner. The children had become an essential part of the cabin's rhythm. They learned to help Jack with chores. Ethan helped chop small pieces of wood under Jack's supervision, while Lily carefully folded laundry or held nails for Jack when he worked on simple furniture repairs. Ranger followed them everywhere. He had developed a strong bond with the siblings, especially Lily, who often rested her cheek against his warm fur whenever she felt tired. The German shepherd responded with gentle nudges and protective glances, as if declaring silently that nothing would harm his new family. Jack watched these changes with a quiet satisfaction. Having spent most of his adult life in the Marine Corps, he had been accustomed to discipline, solitude, and the weight of responsibility. His rugged exterior, defined jawline, weathered skin, and steady posture hid a man who longed for peace. Yet beneath that ruggedness lived a softness he himself had forgotten, one that reemerged naturally around the children. He found himself smiling more, talking more, and sleeping better. The aching memories he once carried had not disappeared, but they no longer felt heavy enough to keep him from enjoying the present. On one warm afternoon, the cabin glowed beneath the golden sunlight filtering through the tall pines. Jack sat with Ethan and Lily on the wooden porch, which smelled faintly of sawdust and pine sap. The gentle breeze lifted Lily's blonde hair and carried the scent of early spring blossoms through the air. Ranger lay stretched out beneath the porch steps, his fur gleaming in the warm light, eyes half closed but ears alert at every sound. Jack leaned back slightly, arms resting on his knees, watching the siblings play with a small wooden spinning top he had carved for them. Ethan flicked it across the porch, and Lily giggled as it wobbled and spun in uneven circles. Their laughter felt like sunshine, warm, simple, and impossible to ignore. Eventually, the spinning top slowed and fell, and Ethan caught it in his hands. His expression shifted from playful to thoughtful. He glanced at Lily. She met his gaze, her blue eyes filled with nervous excitement. They didn't speak, but something passed between them, a silent agreement. The same thought, the same decision. Ethan took a slow breath. Lily mirrored him. Then, timid but determined, they turned toward Jack. "Jack," Ethan's voice wavered slightly. We want to ask something." Jack sat up a little straighter. "What is it?" Lily scooted closer to Ethan, gripping the hem of his shirt for reassurance. Together they spoke in a soft, trembling chorus. "We want to call you Dad, if you want that too." The porch fell silent. Even the breeze seemed to pause. Jack stared at them, caught completely off guard. His deep-set blue eyes widened, as though the words had struck somewhere deeper than he expected. For a man who had endured years of loss, war, and loneliness, it was the gentlest blow he had ever received, and the one that hit hardest. He didn't answer at first. Instead, he reached forward, placing a hand on each of their shoulders. Ethan's small frame tensed, unsure of what the response would be. Lily held her breath, eyes glistening. Then Jack pulled them both into his arms. He held them tightly, one hand on Ethan's back, the other on Lily's hair. He didn't speak. He couldn't yet. Emotion rose in his throat, like a tide he wasn't prepared for. Ranger, sensing the shift, jumped to his feet and bounded up the steps, tail wagging furiously, as if celebrating the moment himself. Ethan and Lily relaxed into the embrace. For the first time in their lives, the word home felt real. In that warm spring afternoon, under the whispering trees and the gentle sun, Jack's cabin became more than a shelter. It became a family. Spring matured quickly in the northern woods, turning the once frozen landscape into a canvas of green and gold. Birds returned to the treetops, filling the mornings with bright chirping, and wildflowers spread across the meadow near Jack Carter's cabin like soft brushstrokes of color. For the first time in years, Ethan and Lily woke each day with smiles instead of fear. They were no longer guests in Jack's home. They were his children in every way except on paper. And that was the final step Jack intended to take. The adoption process began quietly. Jack drove the siblings into Fairbridge, a journey that felt symbolic as they returned not as abandoned children, but as part of a new family. The government office was located in a modest brick building with wide windows and a small American flag fluttering outside. Inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and paperwork. People walked in and out, carrying folders, speaking softly, performing the daily tasks that shaped many lives. A social worker named Melissa Turner greeted them in the lobby. Melissa was a woman in her late 30s with warm brown skin, curly dark hair pulled back loosely, and kind hazel eyes that crinkled slightly when she smiled. She wore a simple navy blouse and held a tablet against her chest, her posture relaxed and approachable. Melissa's personality was patient and reassuring, traits shaped from years of working with children who needed gentleness more than anything else. She knelt slightly to greet Ethan and Lily, asking if they'd like some water or snacks before the meeting. Lily hid behind Ethan at first, but Melissa's gentle tone slowly eased her nervousness. Jack provided documents proving his military retirement, pension, health records, and property information. The examiner, Mr. Harris, a thin man in his early 50s with silver-framed glasses and neatly combed gray hair, reviewed the papers with professional diligence. His expression was serious, but not unfriendly. He spoke with a soft, measured voice, seasoned by years of interviewing families. Mr. Harris wore a charcoal vest over a crisp white shirt, giving him a meticulous appearance that matched his methodical approach. He asked Jack basic questions: why he wanted to adopt, how he planned to care for the children, what their daily life was like. Jack answered every question honestly, his deep voice steady, his gaze unwavering. Ethan watched him with awe. He had never seen an adult defend him before, never seen someone speak firmly and confidently on his behalf. Lily held Ranger's collar with one hand, as the German shepherd sat loyally beside her. Ranger's presence, calm and obedient, earned a small smile from Melissa, who noted that the dog clearly provided emotional stability for the children. When the time came for the home inspection, Melissa visited the cabin herself. She walked through the wooden rooms, observing the tidy beds, the stocked pantry, the clean living area, and the safe environment Jack had created. She also took note of the small handmade touches, the wooden toys Jack had carved, the drawings Lily had taped to the fridge, the stack of children's books arranged neatly near Ethan's bedside table. These details painted a vivid picture of a genuine home, not simply a building. Melissa spoke privately with Ethan and Lily as well. She sat on the porch steps with them, knees bent, hands resting gently in her lap. Her voice was calm as she asked about their feelings, their fears, and whether they felt comfortable living with Jack. Ethan answered slowly but sincerely, explaining how Jack taught him to read, helped him feel safe, and never raised his voice in anger. Lily, playing with a loose thread on her sleeve, whispered that she hadn't had a nightmare since arriving at the cabin. Those words alone told Melissa everything she needed to know. A week later, the final approval came through. The adoption was official. Ethan and Lily now carried a new last name: Carter. On the day the documents were delivered, the forest was bathed in warm sunlight. Jack gathered Ethan and Lily outside the cabin, holding the envelopes in his calloused hands. His deep-set blue eyes softened as he looked at the two children who had changed his quiet life into something filled with purpose. Ethan grinned as he tore open his envelope, reading his new name printed neatly across the top. Lily hugged the paper to her chest, her blue eyes shining with pure joy. Ranger barked once, a sharp, happy sound, and ran in circles around them before bounding toward the meadow. Lily chased after him, laughter ringing like bells across the clearing. Ethan sprinted beside her, kicking up blades of grass as he ran freely across the bright spring field. Jack stood on the porch for a moment, watching them. The sunlight brushed against his face, and a rare, full smile appeared, soft, proud, and deeply content. Then he turned and gently closed the wooden cabin door, sealing warmth and new beginnings inside. This was not a story of bloodlines or fate. It was a story of choice, of healing, of a man opening his home to two lost children, and all three finding a family in the process. And under the open American sky, their journey from winter's cold despair to spring's hopeful peace reached its quiet, beautiful conclusion. Sometimes, miracles don't arrive wrapped in light or thunder. Sometimes, they come quietly, in the form of a man who opens his door, a loyal dog who offers comfort without words, or two frightened children who dare to hope again. Maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe it wasn't coincidence. Maybe it was God gently placing the right hearts in the right place at the right time. From winter's cold to spring's warmth, from fear to family, their story reminds us that God's love often works through ordinary people, through kindness, through compassion, through the simple choice to care when it matters most. And just like Jack, Ethan, Lily, and Ranger found their way to one another, may you also find the people who lift you, the moments that heal you, and the blessings God has prepared for your life. If this story touched your heart, please share it with someone who might need a reminder that hope is still alive, that miracles still happen. Leave a comment below about your favorite part, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story of faith, hope, and kindness. May God bless you and your family, and may His protection be with everyone watching this video. Amen.